I've been promising you this video for at least a couple of months, and today we're finally getting around to doing a dedicated video on the Hermes SPA, including what the Hermes SPA is, in case it's a service you've never heard of, and my personal experience having some of my Hermes bags refreshed there. Because if you ask me, one of the biggest advantages of Hermes bags is that the brand is committed to repairing almost anything, and will of course touch on some of the exceptions on their most iconic bags really anytime throughout their lives. So if you'd like to find out everything that there is to know about the Hermes SPA, including the pricing, the timeline, what to expect, and see some real life examples up close and personal of what the spa is able to do for you and how you can save thousands and thousands of dollars by taking advantage of their services, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. One of the core values of Hermes is this belief that, and I'm quoting here, luxury is that which can be repaired. They genuinely have so much confidence in their products that they believe that you can use, abuse, and enjoy them, and almost any time throughout their lifespan you can take them back to Hermes, and they almost always guarantee that they can repair, refresh, or even resurrect your bags. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rules, which we'll discuss later on, but most things can indeed be repaired because Hermes believes that their bags are so exceptionally crafted. There is nothing that, or very few things that can completely destroy them. And it's quite fair even for a luxury brand as prestigious as Hermes to offer this sort of lifetime warranty, because Chanel no longer does it. Now, the Hermes SPA is not an actual spa. Instead, these are workshops around the world who specialize in repairing bags. So these workshops won't necessarily craft bags. In fact, they're not allowed to make bags because Hermes bags are produced in France, and they have these spa workshops outside of France too. And they're usually led by craftspeople who at one point were trained by Hermes to actually craft bags. So they worked at one of the Hermes workshops who create brand new bags. And after a few years of training and them being able to craft bags from scratch, they had to apply and receive additional training to become a spa craftsperson, because as you can imagine, when they work at a workshop, as skilled and as talented as they are, they'll only really specialize in a particular bag. They'll only be exposed to the latest and greatest leathers, finishes, shapes, and styles. But when they work at a spa, they'll see bags of all different ages, styles, colors, finishes, and leathers. So Hermes has to make sure that the craftspeople working there are the very best and they have the most amount of experience. So when you think of the spa, don't think that it's going to be just an intern wiping off your bag. The craftspeople there are some of the most skilled and most experienced craftspeople that Hermes has on their team. And obviously Hermes does have a workshop in France. So if you live in Europe, your bags more often than not will be shipped off to France. But if you live in Asia, or even if you live in the US, they even have workshops there that can work on your bags. And if you, let's say, drop off an exotic bag, for example, in New York, which by the way, there are very few stores, mostly flagships, that have a dedicated after sales team. But let's say if you drop off an exotic bag in New York, it's very unlikely that that bag will actually be shipped off to France. Instead, they'll try to repair it on the spot, or it will be shipped off to one of the nearby workshops, just so they don't have to ship these really high value pieces back and forth. And also customs is something that can take quite a bit of time when you have luxury goods going back and forth from one continent to the other, which is why there are dedicated workshops in almost on every single continent. So there are different workshops in the US, then there are in France and also Asia. But if there's something really severe that needs to be looked at on your bag, it is going to be shipped off to France and it will be repaired there. Now, one of the questions that I kept seeing pop up on Instagram is, how can I take advantage of this service if I don't have a boutique nearby, or if I don't have an advisor? Can I drop off pieces if I bought them outside of the boutique? Which the answer is yes, you can take any authentic Hermes bag to the spa. I mean, not yourself, but you can drop it off at your local boutique. It doesn't matter whether you bought it from the boutique, whether it's something that you inherited or you bought it on the Preloved market. You will not need any proof of purchase. The only thing that they might ask for a proof of purchase for is if you are ordering an accessory. So if your bag comes with a strap and you need a replacement strap, or you want to order a longer or a shorter strap, or if you want to order a replacement clochette, if you want to get a new lock for your bag and you don't want to have your bag sent off to the spa, because in theory, they don't really need the bag to be able to make a strap for you or give you a new clochette. In those cases, you will need a proof of purchase, or you can choose to ship your bag off too, because obviously Hermes wants to make sure that people are not just ordering, all these authentic accessories for fake bags and then try to sell them as authentic pieces. So if you're going to order something that isn't technically part of the bag, you will either need to show a proof of purchase, or you can choose to ship your bag off to the spa so they can make sure that the accessory that they're crafting is actually going to go onto an authentic bag. I hope that makes sense. But if you are just having a bag serviced, the fact that the bag is authentic, which the craftspeople will see when they start working on it, is all the proof that you need that it is an authentic piece. So you do not need to show where you got the bag from. You don't have to explain where it's from and who you inherited it from. If you don't shop usually at Hermes, but you have a bag that you would like to get serviced because you got an amazing deal on it on the Preloved market, which is why I always say you should not overlook pieces that are not in the best condition, because you can save thousands and thousands of dollars on bags by buying them on the Preloved market and then having them refreshed by the spa. Do not feel intimidated. You will not be interrogated where you got the bag from. As long as it is an authentic piece, Hermes is going to be able to work on it for you. You do not need any additional information other than the fact that you have an authentic bag on hand. And it's also a great way to have pieces authenticated. So if you bought something on the Preloved market and you're not 100% convinced that it is the real deal, by having it serviced and repaired, if they're willing to work on it, I feel like that's all the proof that you need that it is indeed an authentic piece that you purchased. And if they reject your request to work on the bag, I feel like that is pretty suspicious. Now, if you are 50-50 and you're really not sure whether what you're taking in is real or not, I would be careful, because let's say if you live in the US and your bag gets shipped off to France, it's likely that if your bag turns out to be fake, it won't actually make it back to the US, because Hermes will not be responsible for smuggling illegal goods, so fake pieces. So that's just something that you have to keep in mind. But if you bought it from a reliable source and you're pretty confident in your purchase, it's definitely something that is worth taking advantage of. And again, you will not need to show any proof of purchase. You will not need to explain where you got the bag from. As long as the bag is there and you're willing to send it to the spa, that's all you need. If you're ordering a strap, a clochette, or any other accessory, you can choose to bring an invoice with you, or you can have your bag shipped off, which of course you will get back. If this sounds tempting, because let's say you have an Hermes Birkin that you bought a few years ago on the Preloved market, it's something that you have been using and enjoying, but it just needs to be dusted off. Maybe it's something that needs a little bit of a facelift. I know exactly what you're thinking. What does the process look like? Do I just walk into the closest Hermes store and drop my bag off? Yep, it's pretty much as simple as that. So you can drop off your bag at any Hermes store, no matter how big or small. Something to keep in mind is that larger flagships will have a dedicated after sales team. So if you live near the Beverly Hills boutique, if you live near the Madison store, or in Asia, I think in Hong Kong, they have a dedicated after sales team. And then in France, of course, the Faubourg boutique also has a dedicated little desk that deals with all the repair requests. It will make it just a little bit faster. But if you cannot get to any one of these boutiques, that shouldn't be an issue. You can just stop by your nearest boutique. All you have to do is ask to speak to an advisor. Of course, if you have your own advisor, that's going to make things a little bit easier. But even if you don't, that's not going to be an issue. You take your bag with you, you explain that you have this bag that you would like to get serviced, cleaned. They'll ask if you have any specific requests. So let's say if you want to have the hardware refreshed, if you want to get a new lock, if you want the handles replaced, if you want the corners to be touched up, you can make any requests here. They'll take pictures of the bag, of the current condition the bag it's in, and then if you have any specific requests, they'll also note that. And that's when the bag will be shipped off to either France or the closest workshop, after which in a few weeks the bag will be inspected and you'll get a quote in your email which you'll have to approve. So they'll explain what they think, what needs to be done, and they will either approve or reject your request, because it's not guaranteed that they'll be able to do everything that you asked for. But an experienced craftsperson is going to look at your bag and they'll advise what they think needs to be done on the bag, and then you have to approve this quote. Now the quote obviously depends on what you are asking for and what they suggest, but I wanted to give you some specific examples from my experience. Now I have had quite a few bags refreshed, but only 2 of those were actually done at the spa, because I used to live in New York. I used to live really close to the Madison boutique. I used to be able to just drop off my bag, and the craftspeople, if they were available at the time, they were kind enough to just work on my bags on the spot, and they never actually charged me for them, or they never actually asked me to do any sort of paperwork. I think the only bag that they ever needed some time for was one of my one and only exotic bag, that the handle was slightly deformed and they just put it back in place, but even that only took a couple of hours. But since moving to the Netherlands, I have had 2 bags sent to France, one of which was my black Epsom Mini Kelly, where I wanted to have the twist closure replaced, which took about 2 months. And I think I couldn't find the email because at the time their system wasn't quite as smooth as it is now, which I'll move on to in a second. But I got the quote from my advisor, and I think it was somewhere around 200 euros to have just the twist closure replaced, which I know is an insane amount of money. But when I thought about it, it made sense, because they basically had to take the whole bag apart to be able to get to just that one little detail. So that's something that I've had done. More recently, I've had my Constance in box refreshed. There weren't any specific things that I wanted them to work on. I just really wanted to see what the spa is able to do, and they did an incredible job. So just to give you the specifics, I dropped off the bag on September 15th. I got the quote on October 3rd, and what they suggested was a cleaning, a makeup, which I assume means that they just make up the outside of the bag, and a finish. So I guess that would refer to polishing. And because this bag was in heritage leather, it was slightly more expensive than it would have been if this bag was made of Epsom or any other leather, because of course there are different tiers of Hermes leathers. So you have your regular leathers, which, by the way, I'm not being a snob here. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just purely explaining it in terms of pricing. So you have your regular leathers. So these are things like Epsom, Togo, even Chèvre. Above these, in terms of how rare they are, you have your heritage leathers. So things like Faubourg and Box, which are not only more expensive to begin with when you buy a bag in one of these leathers, but any sort of service is also going to be slightly more expensive. So if you need to have a handle replaced, or if the bag just needs to be cleaned, it's automatically going to be more expensive. And then the most expensive of all Hermes leathers are, of course, the different exotic skins, which I do have a guide on. So if you'd like to know the difference between the exotic skins that Hermes offers, I will make sure to have that linked up here for you. So if this Constance was made of exotic, the cleaning would have probably been twice the price, if not more than that. But because this bag is made of heritage leather, the cleaning, the makeup, and I think the polishing, sorry, the finishing, not polishing as Hermes called it, all of that cost me 275 euros, which is definitely a pretty penny. And I'm not sure if I would have gone through with it if I wasn't so curious to see what Hermes is able to do with box leather, because box is really quite prone to scratches and marks. However, it is an extremely hardy and sturdy leather that Hermes can do a lot with, just because there's so much body to the leather itself. And I have to say, I was really quite blown away, because my bag looked pretty much brand new when I got it back. Now, do keep in mind that I'm extremely careful with my bags and there wasn't anything really specific that I wanted them to work on, but the bag that I got back really looked just stunning. So all of that cost me 275 euros. And then in the quote, they also gave me a lead time. So they estimated it to take about 8 weeks. And at that point, you can, of course, say no. So if you get an email or you get a quote with a laundry list of things that they want to work on your bag, and the quote you find is just too excessive, you can, of course, say no. It's not going to be an issue. It's not like you're turning down a bag or anything. Not that that would be an issue. But if you feel like, no, it's too much money, I don't feel comfortable spending so much money on getting a bag repaired, you can say no, and you can always go back and say, okay, I don't want to, let's say, have the handles replaced or the hardware replaced. I only want to give the bag an overall clean and polish. You can, of course, kind of negotiate or put in additional requests. You don't necessarily have to say no, because the quote will have to be approved, and only then they'll start working on your piece. So they estimated it to take 8 weeks, but I actually got my bag back on November 15th. I think it got back to the store, and I dropped it off on September 15th. So the whole process took exactly 2 months, and now the system is really quite streamlined, because as soon as I dropped the bag off, I got an email and I could actually track at which stage my bag was at every single point in time. It was a really cool little system to experience, so I'm glad I ended up doing it in hindsight, and the bag really came back looking brand new. The only thing that they did not suggest, which I completely understand, is they did not replace the hardware, because I know that the hardware is something that a lot of people love keeping in great shape, which is of course something that can be replaced. It can be quite expensive, especially if you're going to have the twist closure itself, the turn lock, replaced, because then they have to take the entire front part of the bag apart. But it is something that can be done, but do keep in mind that it is going to be quite pricey, and sometimes it will come back with stickers, sometimes it will not. I have seen it happen both ways. I don't know if there is a method to the madness or how they decide whether they're going to keep the stickers on or remove them, but at the end of the day, the hardware itself will come back looking brand new. So that's basically what you have to know. And then one more thing that I forgot to mention about the spa is that, of course, it is something that you are going to be responsible paying for. There are very few things that Hermes will fix for free unless the bag is faulty. It is something that you are going to have to pay for, and that's why you get a quote. Now, if your bag cannot be repaired and it's not your fault, but there is something just defective about your bag, Hermes will either offer a store credit, so they will try to find out how much your bag cost when you bought it, and they will offer you a store credit, or I have also seen them fully replace a bag, of course, for the exact same bag that you dropped off, but it doesn't happen too often just because most of their things can indeed be repaired. With that said, let's quickly touch on some of the things that I would not suggest getting repaired at the spa, because they will be insanely expensive. So let's start with something that of course you can do, but just keep in mind that it is going to be one of the most expensive parts on the bag to be repaired, which is the handles, especially when it comes to a Birkin, which they feature hand-rolled handles, and not just one, but 2 of them. Those are actually the most time-consuming detail on a Birkin, unless it's made of exotic skin and it's in a return shape, because turning the bag inside out, if it's made of lisse croc or lisse alligator, is an art form in and of itself. But other than that, if we're just looking at a regular Birkin, the handles are some of the most expensive and time-consuming details on a bag. So if your handles need to be replaced, that is something that is going to be quite expensive, but it can be done. Handles can be refreshed and even completely replaced regardless of the color and the leather. So even if your bag is made of a discontinued leather or it's in a color that Hermes no longer offers, they will try their best to color match it to a leather and a color that is still currently available. So that's not something you have to worry about, because Hermes is very experienced with that, and of course they'll do their best to color match it and match it to a leather that best suits the overall body of the bag. So the handles is something that you have to keep in mind that's going to be quite an investment getting those replaced. And things that cannot be repaired are the lining of your bag. So if you spill something, if you scratch the lining, just keep in mind that that isn't something that can be repaired, which makes sense. I mean, imagine taking a bag completely apart and replacing the lining. It would take just as long, if not longer, than crafting a brand new bag. So the lining is not something that can be repaired. And the structure, if there are any structural issues, if your bag really starts sagging or if it's completely lost its shape, again, it's not something that can be brought back to life, which is why I am such a huge advocate of investing in inserts and the right type of inserts. You guys know that I am a huge fan of 7RP inserts. I know that they are insanely expensive, but I think they do so much for the overall structure of your bag. They really help to support them from the inside out. And if you want to see a prime example of that, I will make sure to have my update on my 7-year-old Kelly bag linked up here, where I show what an insert is able to do for you. I do think that I still have a discount code with 7RP. If it still works, I will make sure to link it in the info box for you, because as I mentioned, the lining cannot be replaced. And if the overall structure of the bag starts losing its shape or it becomes deformed, again, it's not something that Hermes is willing to work on, which an insert can definitely help with. Now, the structure obviously is not something you have to worry about when it comes to a cellier bag, or not quite as much, but when it comes to a return bag, especially a bag in a larger size, a bag that's made of heavier leather like Togo or Clemence, it's definitely something that I would suggest paying attention to. So no lining, no structural issues, and while the handles can be replaced, it is something that's going to cost you a pretty penny. Now, obviously, we have mainly been focusing on the Birkin, the Kelly, and the Constance, because those are some of the most expensive bags that Hermes offers. So it makes sense that people would also feel more comfortable spending money on getting them repaired. And they are the bags that I have the most experience with shipping off to the spa. But in theory, almost anything crafted by Hermes can be repaired. I have even had my Avalon blanket dry cleaned by Hermes and depilled, which cost me, I think, 175 euros, which I would not do that again in hindsight. Instead, I would just probably take it to my local dry cleaner. Speaking of which, things like the Her bag, the Evelyn, those are all bags that can be cleaned. Hermes also offers a dry cleaning service for the body of your Her bag, which I think when I last asked, it was like $300 to have the body of the Her bag dry cleaned, and obviously the entire bag, the cleaning service for that bag was $300. Just because you can take the Her bag apart, I decided to drop the body of the bag off at my local dry cleaner, and the proof is in the pudding. You can see in my last Her bag review how incredibly it looks still, and obviously it's something you want to be careful with. You want to make sure that you trust your dry cleaner before you take $3,000-$4,000 bag in to get dry cleaned, but it's something that I did myself. But again, it's something that Hermes offers a cleaning service for, and it's not just bags, but really anything crafted by Hermes can be sent off to the spa. And my friends, this brings us to the end of today's video on my Hermes spa experience and everything you need to know before you get your bag shipped off to the closest workshop. I really hope you found this video helpful and it wasn't too detailed or too nerdy, because I know we really got into the details with this one, but I wanted to share with you as much as I knew, because when it comes to such expensive bags, you really don't want to be without them, and the more you get done on a bag, the longer it's going to take and the more expensive it's going to be. So I wanted you to be aware of as much as possible. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any additional questions, make sure to let me know in the comment section or send them my way next time I do a Q&A, and we can definitely discuss more about this. And please let me know if you've had any experience with the Hermes spa. I cannot wait to hear from you. And while you're down there, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I really appreciate you being here and watching, and I will see you back here with a new video really, really soon.